So that will be rolled out today. We want also to continue with our panelists and just discuss this and a raft of other issues as far as names is concerned and as far as scandals are concerned in this country as well. You can see one also on the front page of a Daily Nation this morning. But allow me to introduce to you this morning Boni Khalwale, who is the deputy leader of Ford Kenya. Also, we do have with us Senator Aaron Cheruiyot, who is the senator for Kericho. We do have with us Jacob Medio as well, member of parliament, former member of parliament for Game. And we have Senator Kimani Matangi, who is a senator for Kiambu. We're eagerly waiting also for Maitheka Muturi to join us much later in the course of the program. But let's just continue with the discussion of this. First of all, this particular, of course, ruling from the court, Jacob Medio, did you expect this particular outcome?
The one for
NIMS?
for the Huduma Center.
Yes, Huduma Namba.
Well, like I have said here, Dibal, that courts must have conscience. In my view, I think in this case the court had conscience. I think even though they're saying the costs are inflated, I think the government must know who lives in this country. I think we have to go the extra mile to do sort of what the Americans call social security number. We must have one ID for all Kenyans. It will make auditing of the persons living in this country easy. It will make us know who is our neighbor. I think it's a much better system. It's better for this country to adapt technology than to keep saying amorphous things like the one they were saying that every 10 households must know one another. Those funny things.
Nyumba kumi.
Nyumba kumi.
Yes.
That is the one I was thinking about. I think what we need to talk about is how do we embrace technology? After all, this Jubilee government told Kenyans they were going to be digital. I think they should have, that's where they should have begun. But lastly, Dibal, you must know that the census figures in this country are wrong. And the noises Wamatangi and his people were making are not misplaced. We must know who tampered with the census of this country. We must know why Kakamega County or Kiambu County gets less resources than other counties which we all know have less than, have a very small fraction of what Kakamega County or Bungoma County has. We must face this thing. And sitting where I sit, I think there's no reason we should mince words. And you saw yesterday, Dibal, that a section, people from a particular section of this country who have benefited from this skewed census, they were all out fighting yesterday. And those are the people who connived to skew the census figures in the last census.
Who are these people?
I saw the governor of Wajir talking. I saw the governor of Mohammed, the guy who was the former chairman, immediate former chairman of NHIF. I saw Dwale talking. I saw all of them talking. And I have seen Nanok throw figures out there to show or to try to suggest the numbers of his people. Let us register these people electronically and let's see who is hoodwinking Kenyans, because you must take the anger of the people that live here in Kiambu seriously if you're a Kenyan.
Let's hear from Aaron Cheruiyot, and also maybe to throw in also is the issue of the border wall, the Somali border wall, which I'm given to understand has really claimed a lot of lives right now, because there are politicians who are also not interested in having this particular border wall because of, you know, the crisscrossing of some of the persons from Somalia or, you know, beyond the region. When it comes now to elections, this happens a lot.
Yes.
And so many lives have been claimed while constructing this border wall.
Yes, that's true, Dibal. First of all, let me say good morning to Kenyans. This issue of NIMS or Huduma Namba is something that needs a broader discussion. I don't think there's anyone in their right sense who would say that this is a project that we do not need as a country. I think there's good justification for the project. I have listened through the presentations from the cabinet secretary and the team that is handling this particular issue, last week they came before a committee of parliament. I had raised a question on how the whole project was being executed. And they gave us a whole detailed presentation on what it is about. And I think by and large, every Kenyan should agree with the whole idea that there needs to have this particular number where it now puts you together. You know, as it is, Boni Alwale at NTSA is different from Boni Alwale at NHIF, who is different from Boni Alwale at NSSF. But with the coming of this number, he becomes one person in Kenya and amongst all government departments. So there's good justification, and I think they gave better. I listened to CS for ICT, Joe Musheru, explain that many of the data that is available, because people are claiming, why don't you just go to National Register of Persons and retrieve the data? Is that most of this data is in hard form, not the soft copy format, which is what they are looking to have with this Huduma Namba issue. And therefore, I agree on the need for us to do it. Of course, there are questions to do with cost, because part of the presentation they gave is that this, the procurement for the kits, and also the software that will be used. Out of the, I think the project value is about 9.3 billion. 5 billion is procured through confidential procurement, which is an element that one of the things that we need to look at, as we remember on many occasions I've raised here on this provision of the law that we gave to government. We didn't go ahead and become descriptive enough on what are the matters under which government can resort to procure items under this particular section of the law, because I sometimes feel that there is abuse of this provision where we end up confidentially procuring things that ordinarily are available in the market, and there is no need for worry or concern to a point that we feel that we should only invite 2 or 3 bidders to participate, because this is an avenue that can be used for corruption. You must remember that if there is a government department or ministry that continues to have billions of Kenya shillings that the Auditor General struggles to explain to Kenyans how it was used, whether it was put to good or bad use, it is this Ministry of Interior. And this is a particular section of the law that they continue to use. Even on the issue of the border that you have talked about, Dibal, there were media reports about, I think a month or so ago, on how much that wall has cost us as a country. And I have spoken to my colleagues who are members of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee who have visited this particular place. They say sometimes even to get there is a problem, and you're told that, oh, you know, it's not safe for you, and therefore they keep on asking the question, how shall we ever know that these billions that you continue to give each and every time for you to put up the wall, there is value for money for the country? And you know, initially when this project began, it was being handled by NYS, and where we got the cohorts to go and build, and therefore it was government to government procurement sort of. But somehow along the way this was changed, and now it is in private hands, where people are, it is private people that are putting up this particular wall. Therefore it raises one, the issue of cost, and two, also the issue of security, whether whatever is being done is secure enough for us as a people, and whether it will ever be complete. Nobody knows up to date, and I can challenge you, as because you're part of media, to try and get footage from members of our defense forces and show you, out of the close to 1,000 kilometers of border that we share with Somalia, how much, because the intention is to cover, I think, largely the whole of it, how much has been, how much is walled as it is right now. Right. Chances are it's very little, yet we've poured a lot of money. Therefore, there is need for us to look into this provision of confidential voting. I've always asked, what is secret about an AK-47 that will be carried on the street here by a police officer? Thank you. That we have to procure it using, secret procurement.
All right. Let's hear from Wamatangi on this names as well, because the question is, are we doing, an exercise that, first of all, should not be done because of austerity measures? Because we have the integrated population registration system. that has all the data that the government is looking, and it is deemed to be a one-stop, shop for all these data that actually they're trying to do with the Huduma number. This is a duplication. Why can't they implement the integrated population registration system that is currently there? We're talking about funds, we're talking about austerity measures, and still we are doing the same thing that we've done before, and we have the data.
Thank you, and let me say good morning to our viewers. It's been a while. I've been away for...
Yes, welcome back. Good to see you.
And I also want to congratulate Boni Halwale for... I was following when I was out there, on the show. Actually, one day I tried to put in my opinion through text, but unfortunately it did not come through. And I was also on Twitter.
Rigging.
There was a hot debate here.
Rigging.
But I followed up. I just wanted to congratulate Boni Halwale for having chosen to sit on the seat of power.
Oh, that was last week. Huh?
Where I sit. No,
Seat of power.
Dibal, remember we had this debate, and I'm glad you've introduced it from that angle. We
Yes.
had this discussion here, and on the sheer wastage that this country has had to go through by running parallel different registration systems for so many services, from ID numbers to passports to when you registered at birth, when you enter school and so on. We had this debate here. And what cooled my temperature when I read and I got to now understand this Huduma number first was that then it is probably a system that closely would try to come up with exactly what we're saying. The one thing that I've been wanting to hear, and I've not yet still gotten this, is we've been given a window at which you must have registered as a Huduma number bearer. And then it has been followed up, like in today's press, by another rejoinder that it's not compulsory. I mean, you can choose to register or not register. The question one would want to ask themselves is, so what happens when you don't register?
Yes.
And they close the window. If this is going to be data that we can continuously rely on, has there been full disclosure and of course discussion and provision that this is going to be an ongoing process? Because if we say that it is it's a scheme, it's an arrangement we've opened for a period of time and we will close it within that window, then what happens to those who are born after that? What happens to those who don't register? I think that question needs to be addressed, that in future, one who wishes to register and follow the procedures can still be able to register. And definitely, I would share a few concerns that I have. One, I want to acknowledge that if it is properly implemented, it would be a good system to help this country run our affairs. I understand what you've said, Dibal, that we already have enough data collected on the IPRS. But the question is this data fully updated? Was it collected, vetted, probably openly? Because if you ask amongst ourselves, just a sample test of the 5 of us in this room, you would find probably only 2 or so are fully aware about the existence of that system. So the Huduma number would be probably a better option to the extent that at least it's been publicized now, people have been informed about it, educated about it. So all and sundry will be able to participate. But a few concerns, Dibal. See, this number has integrated so many services that Kenyans get, so that if you want to get this service, that other service, you must have this number. One of the key requirements will be that at implementation, this number has got to be, or the services that are subscribed to through this number must be offered completely, without any underhand dealings, without corruption, and definitely without any unfairness. The reason I say that is because, for example, assume that after all registrations, then for a reason or another, government decides to use this data, for example, to link it with your KRA returns, compliance, and so on, which is okay. But then, supposing, for example, you have a dispute about your payments for KRA, And that becomes a reason why maybe you'd be denied access to other services that you require as a Kenyan. and the reason I say, then I say that is because you can be denied so many other services if it is not applied properly. Two, I've seen in the press today, it says that there will be no DNA required. And that became a major issue of contestation. I do not know why, in the first place, it was necessary to have the DNA. But if it is supposed to then authenticate Kenyans who live here, who were born here, who carry national identity cards, and some of them, we know there have been many questions as to how did they gain citizenship, or how did they gain residence for that matter. You know, how will that be resolved? And then probably the other question I would want to ask is, we've seen in the press that this number has been tested in various counties. I don't know, maybe in the days when I was absent, whether there was a complete publication and discussion as to what were the results that were derived or observed after the testing of registration of this number in so many counties as have been reported. Because then that would help people to understand that this is precisely what we are gaining as a result. And lastly, on the Huduma number, then I hope then this brings a closure, a full closure to what I said earlier, that it will not just be one platform, and then after a short while, we have a new requirement. And other than having it again being integrated into the Huduma number system, then you probably have to go and register for something new. Supposing there's another service that comes up that you require to be able to comply with, to government.
Thank you.
For example, if you want to go and apply for a certain service, maybe in your county, do you want to go and apply for a service, maybe to get documentation, maybe registration for citizenship? Is there going to be another new platform whereby they would be saying that now you have to register? If it is going to be the one and only, then maybe it would be a way of starting a good organized system. Let me finish by saying that there are countries that have practiced this system. If you look at countries like Austria, Austria has got a very good system whereby they don't even need to carry out census at any one time. And Dibal, you remember I brought this issue. Let me summarize it by saying, because this is happening just before we go to the census, hopefully it is going to help and inform the census procedure, such that then, as Boni Halwale said, we can have now proper census figures all over, and we don't have to go back to registering again.
Let's hear from Boni Halwale.
Well, I think they have said just about everything, and because this is the second time we are debating this, I'll say very little. National Integrated Management System is an idea whose time has not only come, but which should have come earlier. The advantages are there. Generally, humanity, the mindset is such that people are always very cautious and sometimes resistant about new ideas. Masses tend to be conservative. So the government should have done slightly more in terms of educating the public on why NIMS is important. The advantages are many, but let me just mention to members of the public that we have the issue of the population factor. It is critical because if you don't capture population properly, unlike in the past, when the number of people was not a big deal, now that is a determinant of how national revenue is shared amongst constituencies and amongst counties. Probably members of the public would like to know that in the formula for sharing of revenue, there are weighting factors. And the most critical factor is population. In fact, it takes 45% of the determinant of how much does a county get from the shareable revenue. The second issue is the issue of security. In countries where NIMS is being practiced, security is confirmed to be slightly better. Their border points are better managed. It is sometimes harder for terrorists to infiltrate into those countries because they can identify people. So we must support this wholeheartedly. There is something I'd like to emphasize, namely that the ruling from the court, whereby they are now giving the idea that this thing is optional, is wrong. If we must introduce Huduma numbers, then let's do it as a compulsory exercise.
Holistically, collectively as a country.
Yeah.
Because it beats the purpose that we are doing it and then this is actually out of your own volition.
Yes.
So if the whole population decides not to register, then what?
Then what would you have achieved?
Yeah. And how is it supposed to actually maybe feed in also to the census that you're talking about if we're not doing it comprehensively as a country?
Exactly, and I want to conclude by with the issue of use of biometrics. I see a lot of human rights groups making a lot of noise about the DNA. DNA is not anything special. DNA, probably it looks special because of the long meaning of the word DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. That is simply a biometric. DNA is not different from your earlobe. DNA is not any different from your thumbprint. DNA is not any different from your eyeball. These are unique features that every human being has that gives them identity. And these unique features, scientists have chosen to call it biometrics. So if it's okay to use fingerprints, it's okay to use eyeball, it is okay to use the earlobe, the face generally, then it should also be okay to use DNA. It's not a big deal. Thank you.
All right, but of course the whole issue of data protection I think is the main cog in the wheel here that is driving this particular discussion and the contention between now the government and the human rights organizations as well, because we don't have any requisite data protection law in this country. Another thing that also the Hudumas or this particular number that can be a tripping wire someone can move to court right now is the issue of public participation. The amendment laws were passed.
Let me tell you, my brother, sometimes we tend to split hairs too much for nothing. Something like the blood group. Blood group is a biometric. It's good if you are carrying your blood group on your Huduma number, because in the event you need a blood transfusion, you are a step ahead, because then quickly the doctors are emerging in the room before waiting for the results in the lab. They'll send out an appeal that can somebody come here with blood group A, for example.
Let's not take the myopic view of this discussion on DNA and blood groups. We're holistically looking at the data protection. Could we talk about that without any, accurate data protection law in this country?
You're right.
How are we exposing this?
You're right.
I mean, some of these loopholes that we really talking about.
You're right. That's why parliaments are there in the whole world. Exactly. Parliaments are supposed to do continuous legislation. So that now we are where we are, Parliament should now be proactive so that as they see what is coming, it takes less than 3 weeks for a quick legislation to be done.
Let's say
they can fix the legislation for data protection.
Right. So why can't we fix first the data protection law, then we come up with the Huduma number?
Good idea.
Yeah. Why do we jump the gun?
Exactly my question to CS Joe Mucheru last week when he appeared before our committee, because this is the time we are doing the data protection bill. And the whole question was, why the hurry at this particular point when the country hasn't been able to domesticate a law that ensures that government is able to protect your data? You must remember, some of the firms that are being used in this exercise are foreign, they are not local companies. And therefore, if you have foreign companies that have access to data, we are aware that the biggest battle right now, world over, is a battle for big data. And this can be a huge minefield of data. If somebody, for one reason or the other, doesn't store it in accordance. Of course, you do it with a good intention, that imagining that government will be able to protect your data. And as a citizen, it will be put to good use. But that is not how governments are supposed to operate. Governments operate on a principle of ensuring that there is, first of all, good laws that will protect the citizens before they roll out a project of this magnitude. Another very important bit, Dibal, is what was being raised by Senator Boni here. The issue of compulsory registrations of persons. Now that the court has barred and they have told CS Matiang'i that, you know, you cannot bulldoze people into accepting your ideas, no matter how good they are. And therefore, it was completely misinformed of him and his team to have come up with a proposal that, oh, you know, I had him speak sometimes and say, in another 2 to 3 months, without this particular number, you shall not be able to receive government services. Government services are constitutionally guaranteed rights. They are inalienable, that you can never take them away from any particular citizen. And you know, there's a question also that I keep on seeing associated with various government ministers, that nowadays there's this habit where when government wants to do a particular project similar to this one, they want to rely on provincial administration and chiefs more than leaders. You know, if you go to Kakamega and you want to sell a very good government initiative like this one, do you think the people will believe the chiefs more than they believe Boni Alwale, who has been their leader for close to 20 years? This is the man who you need to first have talked through and let him understand why it is important for his people in Kakamega to be registered. Then he will go to a platform, the platform that he has. You know, these are people that people have elected you. They have put their trust on you and say that because you are a leader, tell us whether this thing is good or bad. Chiefs are the same ones that are handling land disputes. They have ruled in favor of, you know, the rich more than widows. They are battling drunkards. Therefore, they are already naturally on a warpath with the citizenry more than the leaders that are elected. And therefore, on the execution principle, it becomes now very important for them first to engage also leadership right from the local level, the member of a county assembly. They should ensure that in my opinion, the place where they should pitch tent in terms of sensitization of this project is the county assemblies more than at the county commissioner's office.
Right. I'm surprised that Boni Khalwale is saying that we're splitting hairs on the issue of public participation. On a very crucial legislation, I think it is actually the onus of the government to make sure the public is aware, especially on this, and we fully participate, and not just coming with documents which have been, written elsewhere. We fully participate, not just to endorse documents, because what we've been having is endorsing documents which have been prepared with, you know, from other places, and then they come to the public arena for public participation for us to endorse.
Just in 10 seconds, what I can tell you is that the mistake that happened is this. Boni is right to this extent. Or rather, you're right, not him, on public participation. The legislation that allowed government to be able to roll out this exercise was put out in a legislation that otherwise is meant, and Jacoyo Midio, being a long-standing member of parliament, know this, is meant for small-time correction of maybe drafting and that kind of a thing, otherwise known as miscellaneous amendments, yes, where you put up together everything that you need. There was a word that was misplaced in a legislation and that kind of a thing. Yet this legislation that allows government to carry out this exercise was tucked in there. And you know, members of parliament, of course, sometimes people are busy and they don't, if without proper scrutiny of some of these things, because it can be voluminous, they didn't get to the brief detail of discussing this thing to its finality. And therefore, you are right in saying that the country did not do sufficient public participation on this particular issue, because there was no call for memorandum to this issue to Parliament. The only call for memorandum was to Ministry of Interior, because we saw the documents where they had invited members of public, including NGOs, to come and present. But you know, the one that is final and the one that is constitutionally guaranteed is the one that is carried out by Parliament before, where people come before their representatives and tell them, Senator Wamatangi, on behalf of Kiambu people, please do not accept ABCD because of the following. And therefore, you are right in that regard, that public participation on this particular project was wanted.
All right. Jacoyo.
Well, Dibal, you couldn't be more right. My understanding of this whole thing, costs aside, because I think there's some corruption involved with the costing. I thought the way you explained that the data we are looking for somehow exists. It's the cleaning up of the data that we are supposed to be engaged in. One, in this country, we do have a national ID. That ID asks you for your birth certificate, asks you for all kinds of questions for you to be given a Kenya identity card. However, there are many fake ones. That's why we need what Boni is talking about, We need the DNAs and the thumbprints and all those things to identify, to help us weed out the fake ones. Because given the region where we are, and that does not require us to consult any NGO. That is the work of the state to make sure that whoever we are, and however we do it, there must be integrity. However, Dibal, remember, data protection cannot be a small issue the way it may come out. Because you know, during last elections, there was a company called Otimov, French company, which IBC gave our data. We have data that we don't have control of all of us sitting here, including yourselves, that is sitting somewhere in France without our control. And it is about 20 million Kenyans. That should be a reason for concern. What am I saying? That this issue cannot be an issue of Joe Mushero or Matiang'i, because that's where the corruption is. This issue is an issue of legislation. And it must include public hearing. It must include participation of parliament. The parliamentarians, whatever we think about them, they are still our representatives. Yes. So that the power that we have given them as citizens must be exercised when you want to make such a decision. Because who decided this thing would cost 9.3 billion shillings? And what would happen to the data that exists here at Nyayo House? Because even now, you go to Nyayo House, they still ask you for data which they should already have. It means something is amiss, and I want to plead with the two senators here that it is not too late. I don't think the issues we are canvassing were the issues before the court. I think somebody attempted to stop a noble thing. That we have said the courts are right. But going forward, what are we saying? We are saying we need to look at this matter, the costing of it, and the formula to implement it, because most of this data are already in within the purview of government, and they have cost us money within the last decade. So to pump in another 9 billion shillings without justification or justifying to Kenyans, I think is overreaching into our pockets.
And I'm just wondering then, we have the NTSA, which is rolling out the new driver's license that in a way actually integrate all this information we're talking about. So what was the source of this information? Where did they get this information? If we don't have an integrated system, like we're talking about the IPRS.
In fact, now you are getting into the crux of the matter. You have a passport, you have a driver's ID license, then you have a new driver's license which somebody wants to digitalize. Hence my accusation or my allegation that all these agencies, there is a rush to spend our money without a mother thinking, an overall thinking of what is the the intended achievement. Remember recently, or not too long ago, Dibal, you saw the prisons department trying to buy guns in billions. There's too many contradictions in our country, and I don't think we should blame the ministries per se. I think we need to blame the mother body. Who is the cabinet? Chaired by the president. What do they discuss when they go there? Is it tea? Is it nyama choma? What do they talk about when people talk about issues of security? What do they do there? I mean, what can we hail them for? What can we say that the cabinet sat and discussed so far as this issue of single identifier is involved? Because I know when Ronald Reagan came up with this issue of social security, America was as messy. But we need to come up with a simpler number. Even our ID numbers are too long. Something that when a kid is born, since you're saying when a birth certificate is given at birth, give this number to a kid. And I don't think it is a technical thing. The systems which are technical are already there. It should just be a number that is keyed into a computer and populated. And we know today, Midiwos is this number. It is so easy. I don't think we should be talking billions, unless there's somebody conniving somewhere within the system to try to do the same thing we saw in prisons and all these other corruption scandals.
All right. The other issue that is overing...
I think we have to also be fair to the cabinet. A decision that has been supported by cabinet, in my experience in public service, is usually the best. In fact, it is usually better than the decision by Parliament. Why? Because before a debate is made in cabinet, the minister who is driving that particular agenda comes with a cabinet paper. And the cabinet paper is well researched. The minister marks it to the PS. The PS then subjects it to a special committee of professionals within that ministry, senior officers in the ministry, who do the necessary research, prepare this paper, then it goes to cabinet. It is sometimes better than when a decision comes from Parliament, and with due respect, where not too many members of Parliament will have read and researched around that particular issue. So the fact that this thing has come through cabinet, Parliament should also be informed by that cabinet decision and also do their own research so that we can quell the fears and anxiety from members of the public. In fact, the people...
Bonnie Halwale,
yes.
The fact that I congratulated you for sitting on the seat of power
yes.
does not mean that you should hog my opportunity to speak. Because,
I thought you surrendered.
No, because we follow the order. And now, when Jacob finished and about to make my comments, then you just take up my role, or rather my chance, and you start...
today
and you start telling a long story. I thought you were just... So Dibal, I think the opportunity was mine. Bonnie can wait for his opportunity to hear his views. And anyway, Bonnie, of course, there are times when you want to interject before you lose before the motion is lost. I appreciate that, but the same applies, because I wanted to have a go at that debate that you had started, Dibal, on data protection, which Senator Cheriot spoke about very well, about protection and usefulness of data when it is in the hands of entities, agencies, and corporations or companies where you have no control. And of course, the fact that, as he said, that data is one of the most valuable, marketable items any company would hold and sell at any one time, and of course it's highly profitable. But besides that, Dibal, it also has the important angle on the question of democracy. Because, there has been this long argument, and I remember most of us here as lawmakers are quite akin to some of the cases that were prosecuted sometimes in the US, whereby individuals and companies were fighting with the government as to, remember like that case where the company Apple itself was fighting the US government as to whether, because government is intent on accessing data belonging to an individual, whether they should unlock his phone for government to be able to access. It's not really the only model case, but it is a pointer that you see, in democracy, there's this big argument as to whether the state exists for people, whether people are just objects or subjects of the state, such that the state can use them. And then the state knows everything that the people need, and they can just come down and say, this is what you need, and dispense it. Or is it the opposite? That people are free, they're independent, you should have your own freedom and determine to a certain extent what is good for you and what's not good for you. And I believe, because we had discussed the approach that the civil society was taking on some of these questions in the opposition to the Huduma Namba, which of course I do not wholly support. But in the long run, if Dibal, and this is how you find, democratically speaking, that sometimes we end up losing it, and you can perpetuate a dictatorship in the long run if you're not careful. If the state has this presumed mindset that they know everything that is good for you, and that they can access for example, if it is all your information or your data, manage it and give you solutions and options in what to do. And so I think on the question of the usefulness of having our data protection law passed, and with several provisions whereby at least you also as an individual have a say as to where it stops. I believe that's very important. Lastly is on this question that you asked.
Can I interject that briefly? We hold on to that thought. We take a short break. When we circle back, we can continue with that. Right, thank you.
Beautiful.
Right, we want to take a short break right now. You're watching People and Politics. Of course, we're taking a keener look on what is happening on the current state of politics in the country, and also what is happening with the Huduma Namba, which will be rolling out in Machakos. It will be rolled out today, actually, in Machakos, and we'll also be following that for you in our subsequent bulletins as well. For now, we'll take a short break. When we circle back, we continue with the discussion of this. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're watching People and Politics here on AM Live. And of course, well, we're having breakfast. This is a breakfast show. And I'm just about to serve Bone Halole. This is your coffee, right? And I'm joined also by Mithika Lenturi as well, as we continue with the discussion pace this morning. Before we took a short break, it was also Kimani Matange's time to continue. Continue.
Thank you so much. And Dibal, we were on the issue of that question you'd asked, that now that NTSA is digitizing licenses, where did they get this data and information for them then to offer the service?
Yes.
And is it at cross purposes with what's going to be happening with the Huduma Namba? And probably what I would say, as far as I know about the digital license, is that what NTSA was seeking to do was to have a license digitized so that consequentially, if it is, for example, offenses on the road, conduct of drivers and so on, can be managed and sometimes reined in or controlled depending on how drivers behave. And the data that is required for you to get a digital license is not necessarily the data that you require to give, or the information you need to give to get a Huduma Number, because definitely for the Huduma Number you need to give a lot of information, birth certificate and so on, and other information. For the license, I think the information you require largely is identification for a national ID card, and then having the proficiency or passed the proficiency test to be able to drive a motor vehicle. So I think the two are slightly different. But then now that we have started the Huduma Number arrangement, then it would be now much more better to have this integrated, including now the data that NTSA will continue to use from here. They can derive it from the Huduma Number data that's there. For example, if you go apply your license, you've passed your examination, they want to then authenticate that you're getting that license, either as a Kenyan, as a resident, as a visitor. They can go to the Huduma database and get that information and then correlate it and then give you the license. I believe that will be a better update for the information. So I think that's what I wanted to add. However, Dibali, it may be of interest to ask, what is the uptick of this digitized license? Maybe you would ask this panel here, how many of us here have got a digital license? You might be surprised, maybe none. I've got one.
Digital?
Yeah, the digital license. And
not even you. Do you have one?
Well, I've been offered one. It's been brought to me as the chairman of the Roads Committee.
Yes.
I had been offered one by the chairman of that team at NTSA. However, I've not been able to go and apply it. Boni Halwale, you can also go and apply. I see the look on your eyes. But I think it is also something that they need to publicize. They need to talk about it and offer Kenyans the opportunity to go and get digital licenses. Indeed, I think it should be made conditional, if it is not already conditional, that upon application for renewal of a license, then they automatically revert to offering you the digital one. That would increase the uptake, in my view.
Thank you. Okay, we need to wind up on this a bit, and the question would be, again, there is the whole issue that the government will use a third party like the MasterCard to facilitate public service payments. This is a violation of our rights, so to speak, because if you need a custody of our data, then how do you subject it to to another third party without our consent. And I think this has been the whole debate about data protection that we're talking about. You mentioned the Googles and the, some of this giant tech that we have in the world right now. Also we've been seeing them subjected to some of the court cases because of data privacy and data protection as well. Maybe we can listen in from Mythical Lenturi. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning,
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be back here.
It's been a while.
Time. Yes, true.
One of the pioneers of people and politics.
I'm not rejuvenated.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
Maybe briefly you can comment on the names before we move on to other discussions this morning.
To be honest, I think probably the whole idea about this number, in my view, could be good for this country. And I think the problem that we have, just like many other things that emanate from the government side, is the manner in which the whole thing is being implemented, in the manner in which the whole thing is being taken to the public without proper participation and involvement of the people. Because I want, and I'm not trying to feign ignorance here, this NIMS is something that, being one of the representatives of the people of Kenya, does not or even aware of, or now it's supposed to be operating, despite the fact that I would be one of the people that are supposedly to be used, or probably would be drumming support for the whole thing. So I would suggest that whenever there are many things that are to be done that touch or involve the public, the aspect of public participation and consultation is very necessary, because the members of parliament or any other leaders, those have an opportunity to serve, should first of all at least be meant to understand. Because when I got to know about it is when a member of parliament listed in the Senate, and there was a lot of heated debate about the whole thing, and I think almost to situations whereby you would have seen a house that was almost getting divided, and people may think that we are not in support of the government that they are supposed to be supporting in terms of implementing its project. So what I would say is that for one's sake, let the public, let the people's representatives be involved when we are implementing such critical decisions.
Well, Debal, just a couple of things, and I hope Auditor General is watching. Please, Eddie could save Kenya by clarifying the cloudy areas of this mystery. It's a good thing. Which the panelists agreed, but
which mystery?
The mystery is that why is nobody asking why this exercise and the one for a new generation ID and the one for the new generation passport and the one for a new generation driver's license is not one exercise. All this money is put together. They are a sizable amount of our budget, and they are doing the same thing. And let me just assure my friend, my good Senator Wamatangi, that the information being asked of us in the new generation ID or driver license is not different from the information we are being asked in this Huduma thing. They cannot be. I mean, what is it? Your birth certificate, your county of origin, and those information are generally generic. What I am saying is that why can't we use a driver's license like they use everywhere else in the world to house all our information? It makes it less susceptible to duplication, because it will have more information that the pirate would not know. A lot more information. And I want to plead with Senator Aaron has said that Musheru appeared before them. Call them, use your powers, which we have donated to you, to call the Auditor General to go look at this mess and guide Parliament which way to go. That is also the work of Auditor General. Yeah.
All right, I just want to also brief you on what you're seeing right now. Samburu Governor Moses Kasaine has been arrested by EACC after DPP approved his prosecution of a county corruption scandal. That is what we have currently as a breaking news this morning. Samburu Governor Moses Kasaine has been arrested by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission after DPP approved his prosecution of a county corruption scandal. And of course, we shall give you details of this much later in the course of the program. But for now, we want also to drill deeper and get to discuss. You want to comment on this, especially on corruption? Right. Let's hear from Aaron Cheriot.
You know, this is how now proper fight against corruption should work. Where, you know, the gentleman went to EACC, he recorded his statement. I think he answered the allegations that was before them. The figures then were huge figures that were being quoted, but I've just seen the brief from DPP, is that based on what was presented to him by EACC, what he thinks is a watertight case, I think is what they're calling a fuel scam of 84 million Kenya shillings. You know, you remember when this matter first came, there were huge amount of money that were being quoted, as is typical with our press. Anyway, that one is a debate for another day. But it just goes on to strengthen the point that some of us have been raising on this panel for such a long time, that DPP oversights the work of DCI and EACC. Oversight to the extent that they first prepare a file, DCI or EACC, and say, we think Dibal should be charged by the state because of the following, and he forwards to DPP. DPP has a team that goes through the material evidence that is being presented before him, before he either okays or rejects the request to charge you. And therefore, when you have this animal that you are being told is called a multi-agency team, where AG, who signs the contract, sits there, DPP, who is supposed to oversight the work of DCI, sits together with the DCI and EACC on it, something is lost. And that is why I agree, because I watched Senator James Orengo in court last week over this issue of DCJ, Philomena Mwilu, on the shock and astonishment he got when the whole saga was unfolding, that DPP and DCI showed up at the Supreme Court without witness statements and wanted to charge. You know, these are very basic and fundamental principles of how you operate. You know, it just tells you how incompetent this exercise is. Because when you show up at Supreme Court and you want to charge Philomena Mwilu and you haven't even taken a witness statement from her, it just tells you how the whole exercise is shrouded in mystery and is being directed from certain interested quarters. And therefore, the reason why I agree with this one is because due process has been followed. That is what many of us have been asking. We are not asking for any favor from DCI or from EACC. We are just saying, follow the law. And this is what has happened in this Samburu Governor issue.
So what would you say also of Ndidi Nyoro, the Kiharu Member of Parliament, who is seeking to limit the Director of Public Prosecutions and Director of Criminal Investigations in handling corruption cases? With that particular legislation, you know, this time they think that, yeah, these particular offices are being, you know, puppeteered by the executive.
Yes, you know, I haven't read the bill, but I think if it is what I suspect it to be, I agree with him. You remember I've quoted before you Article 79 of our Constitution. There was good sense and good reason why, as a country, we felt that the fight against corruption should be spearheaded by an independent body. And that is why, as we speak even today, and it's a matter I've had, because I've had opportunity to look at some of the businesses that is before the House in the coming week. And perhaps Mithika should be knowing this better because he's a member of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. Is this battle for supremacy between EACC and DCI, where certain files that were previously before EACC, all of a sudden, they have been shifted to DCI, and that is where they're being handled. Until we are able to answer this question as to what was the wisdom that the drafters of our Constitution and Kenyans agreed with them, that we need to have an independently oversighted body that is not under the direction of anyone handling matters on corruption, we will not be able to win this war. Otherwise, so long as it is with someone like DCI,
thank you,
who is an errand boy for someone, you will never be able to find the truth.
So
which
you
is unfortunate.
You still hold the view that he's an errand boy of someone?
Yes, of course he is.
All right, let's hear from Boni Khalwale. Did you comment about Samburu?
Yes. Yeah, before I comment that, I want to disagree with my brother Cheriot. under the Constitution, there is no clause that suggests in any way that the DCI is an errand boy of anybody. But then let me come to the issue of the governor. The governor has been arrested. This does not mean that it's a confirmation of guilt. However, I want to ask the government, and especially His Excellency, to now move ahead of events. Now that the DCI and the DPP appear to be making progress in their work, where is their work going to end? The good industry from these two officers is going to come to naught unless the corruption in the judiciary is fixed. There are far too many allegations of corrupt judges. Worst of all is that the majority of the judges at the Supreme Court are suspected to be corrupt. I think Parliament should help the President to see how we can reconstitute the Supreme Court afresh. Some of the allegations we can only wait and see whether it is true that our Supreme Court judges are corrupt. But others, it is just common sense. Like the governor of Wajir, the guy didn't have a degree.
Yes.
And the Constitution requires that a judge, a deputy, not a judge, a governor and a deputy governor must have a degree. So if the guy didn't have a degree, how on earth did they not overturn his election? So there's something inherently wrong with the Supreme Court. We like Maraga very much. My brother Smoking is there. We were with him at the university. But we're just not happy with the results that are coming from there.
So the corruption is running the whole gamut, you know, from the judiciary to government agencies. Let's say from Jacomi Dio.
Dibal, I think Boni has said it all, but I'm surprised Boni is contradicting his boss.
Which boss?
Chariot. Chariot talks against the DPP. Boni is supposed to clap. Boni is supposed to clap, but that's with a light touch. But I think we have our work cut out for us. Beginning with cleaning up the judiciary. I said here many times that we will not win the war against corruption if we do not clean the agencies that are tasked with the whole task of fighting corruption, beginning with the judiciary, parliament, and the police. Once you deal with politicians, which I think we are dealing with effectively, that's why there's so much noise, because the leaders of corruption have always been asked the politicians. We give the instructions and use the system. Now we need to move to the judiciary. And I am so happy that the system is calling the judges for who they are. I'm happy what Boni has said. It is not to say all judges are bad, but when the law says you must have a degree, if you don't have a degree, how else can a conscious judge? Judiciary must have conscience. It is killing our future. It's killing our imaginations of a good Kenya in years to come, when a judge can sit, for example, and say, allow sugar on a technicality which is laced with mercury. You know,
yes.
we must deal with these issues. However, Debala, I think the MP is wrong. The MP who is trying to clip the powers of DPP is wrong. The DPP needs more powers than he has. And I think what the institution which is out of place is the one called EACC. We have had EACC since the days of Moi. They have not had an effect. And in fact, the composition of that body, you know, I remember we talked about this thing here a few weeks ago. And if you go to the Constitution, it says to talk, the EACC is to police issues to do with Chapter 6. That is all their work is. But general criminality and corruption is the work of DPP and the DCI. They actually should work under them. Whatever they police, that's why we have consistently denied EACC prosecutorial powers. Dibal, I want to end by saying, because we are commenting about the Samburu governor, the young man who thought public money is his money. Beginning today, and I saw the DPP talk about it a while back, these arrested governors must step aside. You know, this guy, you will go and charge him in court, he is going to go back to Samburu and steal more.
To pay the judges.
To pay the judges. So this guy must not have access to his office. And you know, I agree with the president when he said, if the system fails, the people must take matters into their own hands. This issue of the governors being charged and remaining in office is one that Kenyans must rebel against. I think there is more corruption in county government than, as much as there is in the national government.
All right. And let's hear from Kimani Matangi before I read some or an excerpt of the press statement that is coming from the EACC right now, briefly.
Yes, Dibal, on that issue of the Samburu governor, the commentary there, my take is that, as earlier stated, the process of finding out whether he is guilty or not guilty has just started. And that's why we have our laws. That's why we have that process and structure in that process. Such that now, those charges, once confirmed by the DPP, means that the court will then take and peek in detail into what has been alleged and see, is the man guilty or is he innocent? And of course, we also must remind our viewers that our law states clearly that every man, every woman in this land and our constitution is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty in the court process. And because some of my colleagues have lauded, and especially Cherio, that our law should start being followed to its truthfulness and its procedure. Let that be done. Now, secondly, is on this question that has been addressed here by my brother Jacoyo on that, and actually mentioned earlier by Bonnie, on the degree question in that ruling by the Supreme Court. You know, you get to realize, probably when the reasoning comes out, that when they say the law is an ass, they mean many things. You know, for example, you're going to hear very interesting arguments about this degree. The arguments would be, Medhika Linturi is a new entrant into this field. He probably will tell us that they would be asking maybe if it is required that you have a degree for you to be elected as a governor. What is the function? What is the intent? What does the degree facilitate you to do to be a governor? And they'll be saying probably the same argument you'd be arguing, that if you're asked to make sugar, to make tea sweet, and so you add sugar, if you added a sweetener other than sugar, would you be having the same idea? I'm just saying that the gymnastics of the interpretation of law are huge and wide, you know, for the understanding of us. And of course, I was one of those who found it very amusing, to find that judgment saying that the governor acted and behaved in a manner likely to suggest that he's a degree holder. I mean, to that extent. But what I'm saying is that, of course, that's how the law reasons. I don't want to get into those details because that's not the issue. Lastly, Val, allow me to comment on this issue of Dindi Nyoro and the revision of law that he seeks. And probably the question I would be asking is, what happens then when a time comes and the people sitting in EACC are not either as agreeable, congruent, acceptable, reasonable, as one would expect, and then you have watered down the other institutions, and then you have an EACC that at that time would be having rogue individuals, and yet the other institutions are not what they are intended to be. And lastly, let's also be clear that constitutional bodies, independent bodies, are enshrined in our constitution with their functions and powers. I think it is important to have that balance. We shouldn't interfere. What we should persist on is, can the process be above board? Period.
Thank you. Right. Yeah. Let's hear from Medhika Linturi finally on this particular story of Samburu?
Ndipal, I want it very clear, and I want to say that corruption, plunder of public funds, is a vice that we must all fight. And I would want to say that this can only or should only be done within our constitutional and legal framework. There's no doubt about it. That is what we should do if we do not want to fall into the suspicion by those people that are against it, or to be taken to be politicizing the whole thing. But let me say this, because somebody has touched on the judiciary and the office of the DPP together with the proposed legislation. It is clear that it cannot just be understood by everyone, and it should not be really an issue that should really bother us so much if we really want to move this country forward. Because when we talk about wrong decisions having been made by the courts, it is not right for us to condemn the courts, because we have a legal mechanism and framework to challenge decisions that are made by the courts, save for the decisions of the Supreme Court, which can only be reviewed by themselves. And I would want to say that when there is a clear legal provision that, for example, if you want to be run as governor, you must have a loan, you must have a degree, then whichever way you want to look at it, you will not change that legal position. It is irrebuttable. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I would ask that let us as Kenyans be bold enough to strengthen institutions, because if we do strengthen institutions and things start flow according to the laid down legal framework, then we'll have every reason to challenge. And currently, the way the system is, if somebody has a problem with the judicial service, with the judges, the Judicial Service Commission is there. Let's go there and address that issue. If one judge has errand, it is not the own judicial system or the own judiciary that is corrupt. We are individuals. Criminal responsibility is individual. That's how we need to look at it. And finally, because you've raised this issue of the amendment to the law,
yes,
in regard to what the governor of Samburu is facing this morning. I am the deputy of the Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights Committee of the Senate. And it is just last week when the multi-agency task force on corruption appeared before my committee. And this committee, the members of this task force is the Attorney General, is the DCI, is the EACC, is the DPP, and
asset recovery.
Yes, and yeah, exactly. So all these people came, and they had a raft of laws that they would want us to look into and make amendments for us to give them power and more strength to fight corruption. The Senate, we did not have a problem in trying to ensure that corruption is fought. But one question that I raised in that particular meeting, and the answer will bear me out, is because there was an amendment to Section 62(1) of the ASECA Act. And the proposal they are making is in line with what Jacoyo is asking, that anybody that has as executive authority, once charged, then should step aside. The question I raised then, because you know there's a legal proposal coming from government. It's asked them whether there has been change of heart and change of mind from the executive. And why I did that, because in 2015, Jacoyo, you were in Parliament. I think was in the Senate. The Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Bill of 2015, I moved an amendment to the same section section 62(1) to provide for people with executive authority to step aside once charged in court. It is me who did it. I have the copy of the answer. I pushed and rallied the Parliament to pass the same law. The same law was passed, it was taken for assent. It was not assented to.
It was rejected.
It was rejected and returned back to Parliament by way of a memorandum. And we were not able to marshal enough members to overrule the proposal by the President. That we did in 2015. And in 2019 today,
You see it again.
it's now coming again. It is under debate. We will be looking at it. So what I am saying is that this is what you do, and when presented with similar facts, you start to wondering that, well, could it have been that time anybody thought that you are targeting an individual or somebody else, and now that the road is
All right,
clear.
so you think actually this particular turn of events with this particular proposal you had, it's politically motivated?
No, what I'm
Is that-
saying,
yeah.
this is what I saw in 2015.
Yes.
And because that particular time, what we are providing for, that time was for governors that would have been charged to leave office. And actually, if you read the memorandum, what the memorandum said was that the probability of misuse of that particular law was so high because you would be sacking governors just like any time that one was
thank you.
was uncomfortable with the performance of the work.
But I agree with Bideka and thank him to have been having proper foresight. That was the right thing, and I was with him in that legislation, and I think most people supported it. But times are different. Who knew in 2015 nearly all governors would have audit queries? The constitution was well intentioned. The only thing in 2015 that there were the issue of the Hague trials, so that whoever would step aside would have been the top of the executive, the two gentlemen. Now we are here. I think memory is good when you don't have to deal with the past.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we want to do is to look forward so we can give our people a better past that even if they were to remember, we would be working in good progression. But as it were debunked, ask what Senator Wamatangi is saying. Ask yourself, why won't a governor charged in court, why is Ojamong sitting in office and the people who are charged with him suspended? What is so special about a governor? And he has executive authority. In other words, here you are giving an accused person, and we are not saying they are guilty, a chance to go and clean up their mess, because that is the would-be evidence in court. Mm-hmm. And if you give them that power, and they are all powerful, you are not doing the right thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dibal, there's just a quick thing that I want to say.
We wind up on it?
Yes. Yes. In all this war on corruption, I think it shouldn't be taken that for those of us who keep on either raising very pertinent issues on what is happening that we think you either need to streamline, that we are opposed to it. I, for the record, have said on many occasions that I'm so clear that if there is a vice that we need to do away with, it is the vice of corruption, because it continues to wipe away our resources. But when there are obvious inconsistencies in how public officers like DPP, DCI, EACC continue to wage this war, then I argue, and this is very clear to me, that that is corruption in itself that they are perpetuating. For example, I'd wish today, when you send your reporters to go and cover this story, let them ask DPP, the file of Siaya governor, that gentleman, your governor, Rasanga, arrived there years earlier than this one for Samburu governor. This one arrived there less than 2 months ago. He has concluded and is charging that particular person. Who is this that is interfering with the office of DPP that does not allow him? He doesn't have the courage to charge Rasanga. Yet it is an obvious and a known fact that even summons were issued for him to be arrested. He is even on record having gone to a public function and say, so long as, a particular person is, so long as there is a handshake, I will never be arrested. And true to his word, he has never been arrested. So when you have such glaring inconsistencies in the war on corruption, that becomes corruption itself. And that is what we are doing.
But the dynamics of investigations are very different. You cannot have a cookie cutter to all these cases.
We must say something. Samburu is a tiny little county there, populated by people essentially who have historically been marginalized. I am not convinced that Moses Kasain is not a sacrificial lamb. We know of mega corruption cases by governors. He's given the example of Rasanga. We people of Kakamega, we have an open and closed file of 200 million shillings purported to have been paid to farmers of Mumia Sugar Company for payment of deeds, which farmers did not receive. That was spotted by the Auditor General. Member of Public Accounts Committee of the Senate is here. They presided over it. Governor refused to come. The matter was taken to EACC. Nothing has been done. This handshake could be a problem.
Yes, it is.
Because, like in the case of Rasanga,
So it boils down to handshake again.
Rasanga is the governor of Siaya. Siaya, the home ground of one of the handshakers. The one of Kakamega is the deputy party leader of one of the handshakers. We have to ask these things.
But should we see everything through the prism of handshake right now?
I mean,
is that the bridge that everything has
it
to
is
be
Rasanga who
through
said
the
it.
handshake?
It is Rasanga who said it.
He said it.
He said it himself.
So long as Raila Odinga is in this government, I will never be arrested.
Exactly.
Ask Jakoyo here, he was in that function.
Jacob, can you
No,
confirm that?
may I, Jacob, before you respond to mine as
He
well.
wants to confirm, but he fears the repercussions.
Jacob, can you also respond to mine?
Yes.
Namely, that you seem to point a finger at Ojamong. In Ojamong's case, he's being suspected of having misappropriated 8 million shillings. So you are pushing for Ojamong's case, and in your home county of Siaya, concerning Rasanga, and you think in that case you do not have to push. Are you punishing Ojamong because he no longer supports one of the handshakers?
Well, I will begin with that. First of all, I didn't think, I've known Ojamong for many years. I just used him as an example.
Yeah.
Ojamong, I remember one day, many years ago, around the year 2000, one day we had to look for a kiosk to split 20 bob because we didn't have fares home. So I know, I know when he has misplaced fortune, I also get concerned because we were around that outfit to protect public good. We suffered like that to protect public good. I am still trying to do it. I have no excuse for Rasanga, and let me confirm to you that during the campaigns of Migori Senate, Rasanga said the DPP, and the DPP has said it publicly, that he issued warrants of arrest for Rasanga, and Rasanga went dancing in public and saying he only had to make one phone call. I don't know to who, but he seems to be that connected. But the thing is, theft is theft.
Right.
If you are going to deal with a thief, whether it is Ruto or Rasanga or who, these are all thieves. There should never be anything special. However, I must say, and you will agree with me, one of the reasons I am not sitting where Cheriot and Wamatangi and Linturi are sitting is because of my persistent and consistent criticism of corruption in Siaya County. Yes. In fact, I was so happy last week. I would have had a drink except I'm in Lent. Last week they charged a gentleman called Marube, who was the county secretary of Siaya, who built a house of wood for 23 million shillings. And why would you want to charge Marube and not charge Rasanga? So I agree with Aaron. You know, it is the boss who called those people. And you know, the people they are charged with was a contractor allegedly associated with another governor in Coast Province.
All right. Okay. So this is of what is actually the breaking news this morning regarding the Samburu governor who has been arrested by the EACC after DPP approved his prosecution of a county corruption scandal. Maybe I can just read an excerpt from the press statement from the office of DPP pursuant to complaints received from concerned members of the public in February 2019. And the Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, commenced investigation into the financial dealings of the governor and the chief officers of Samburu County. The investigations established that the governor, Moses Kasaine, Lennon Kulal, was trading with the county government through Oryx service station for the supply of fuel since the 27th of March 2013 to date, the governor failed or neglected to disclose his interest in the said service station. It is clear that the governor engaged in a conduct that is expressly prohibited in law and in clear violation of the Constitution principles governing the conduct of public and state officers. And it goes on and on. That is just an excerpt of the press statement there from Director of Public Prosecutions. Okay, Linturi. No.
Please, a very important question. On this matter, Linturi, as Senate, Kenyans recall you sat on the matter of Ruaraka, and you mentioned CS Matiang'i. What became of that matter? Can you tell us?
Was there a phone call?
You can just sacrifice this report.
Of course, phone calls cannot be directed to me, but the truth of the matter is, corruption fights, and you should never think it is that easy. That's why there is all this shulabaloo. And corruptly acquired funds can be used for anything. So what I want to say in this case is that we sat on the Ruaraka land. I am the Vice Chair of Public Accounts Committee of the Senate. And we sat on that investigation. I personally was there. And we did our own findings and made a report to Parliament. And when we did the report to Senate, I remember there are very many questions were raised on procedure of getting it to the floor and many others. And we suspect that many other people may have been talked to. And for that matter, the report was not debated. But that, as it may, I know, and the questions we must be asking is because there are files of serious public interest. And by virtue of Article 157 and Article 11 of the Constitution of Kenya, the DPP has the power bestowed upon him by the Constitution to protect public interest. Even if the Senate did not pronounce itself on this matter, because there was no adoption of a report, then, because this is an active matter that has been going on, and there was so much evidence that was tabled before the committee, which he did himself collect through his officers. He shouldn't be able to come out and tell us on this Ruaraka land, this, because number of ministers were the PA secretary was mentioned adversely in that report. The Minister of Education was mentioned adversely in that report. And since he gathered all the evidence, if there was no material evidence that would have sustained a prosecution, then he needs to come out and tell the public these were their findings, and we've now cleared the following people. And that should end there. Alternatively, take people to court.
Right, thank you.
But as far as I am concerned, until that matter is settled, either by seeing people in court and ensuring that there is a successive prosecution, then the DPP must also know one day in his life he will also answer to Kenyans, because he shouldn't be in a position to protect people. And then when I talk about protection of people, is that he bases his decisions on evidence, and if he decides to charge somebody and goes through court, then he must jail him. And if he doesn't jail him, because careers have been destroyed through these prosecutions, these investigations, or whatever it is, then he must always tell us and give us a solution on how to remedy the character assassination of the people that have all been taken through this process, either through truths or untruths.
Thank you. Right, we are remaining with a few minutes, but I wanted just also to comment on the upcoming State of the Nation address. This will be on Thursday. Just looking at, the political tone and tenor right now, and this particular State of the Nation address, people are eagerly waiting to see what the president will have to tell the country in regard to the fight against corruption. And so much has happened. The tension, has been rising as far as this is concerned. I don't know, what is your take, Jacob Midio, on this? Do you see in any way maybe a repeat of what happened, was it in 2014, where we had cabinet secretaries being mentioned that were embroiled in corruption and were asked to step aside? And this is exactly what Mithika Linturi is talking about, people who have the executive powers. That particular proposal that you had mentioned that has come to the fore, that people should step aside. Do you think in any way heads somewhat will roll, or people will step aside?
Well, I think I would hate to use the word incompetence on the president, maybe the word reluctance. You know, there's too many people around his executive setting that are just are mentioned over and over. And why do you need him to go to parliament? I think he needs to act. I think the president should spare us the urge to call him names publicly. Because what is the work of a president? Half the cabinet is mentioned in graft. And he keeps saying, the president nowadays, Dibal, he does not finish a session without dwelling on the issue on the fight against corruption. Wouldn't it be good order that the president dismisses people, much like he did with the Cheza? Cheza, nobody even knew what he did. But these are, nobody knew. If you ask me why was he fired, even I've seen things that true or false, he's asking why was he fired. But what about these people mentioned in graft in terms of billions? What stops the president? Why does he need to go before parliament? The Jubilee government killed parliament. Parliament, like Medika is lamenting here, parliament is a house of lamentations. In fact, going forward, we would have to overturn so many rulings made by the house so that we can have an orderly country. Parliament is as dead as a dodo. So the person who is leading this war, who is the president, please don't wait for Friday.
For Thursday.
For Thursday. Do something. I mean, go there looking good. I'm not his advisor, but I'm advising him that more Kenyans would be glued on if he fired half his cabinet today and gotten Kenyans who are, we cannot lack the ball.
Thank you.
People, Kenyans who can be half clean or clean.
Right.
Yeah.
Jerry, do you think this will be the crunch time? As far as it's you. I've lost the sequence, actually. Yeah, you've been
what I will have to do now.
No, you are
next show, I'm sitting well into this.
Okay, over time.
Absolutely. I think we'll be doing rotation now. On a serious note.
Your coat,
on a serious note,
it's because your coat is almost the color of the backdrop.
You know, Dimal, can we agree on a motion right now that we are going to be rotating in the sitting order, including yourself?
Including me. I agree.
So that you becoming here so that, you know, sometimes we have an opportunity to have the first take or the last take. And and even yourself, the issues that you raise, you can raise them from both sides. And I think that's next week. The boss has made that decision. Remember, we determined that this is a seat of power when we started. and so next week the order reverses. Now,
fantastic.
Anyway, I just wanted to mention, Diba, that I think it's very hard for the president to make an effective State of the Nation address this Thursday without having to mention the issue of corruption. Because, you know, corruption is now the most current matter on people's lips. And if you listen to the vibrations beneath the undercurrent, when people think about the promises on the delivery of the Big Four agenda, and mirror it against the ongoing war on corruption, then questions linger loudly. Is it going to be possible to deliver on the Big Four agenda when the war on corruption is at the height at which it is, and including the way we are driving it? And that's why I want to say first, I believe that it is not necessary at all for the president to come to Parliament on Thursday with a list like he did. Indeed, I would dare say that the list he came with the last time did not yield what you would call a positive, impetus on the war against corruption. Because other than being taken for what it is supposed to have been as a first step, then eventually it was used as a dilutant to the intention that it had. And the questions were, why didn't you sack this one? Why did you bring this name? He better not come up with a list. As some of my colleagues here have said, people are known, names have been put across. And then we have to marry that with exact words that were used by some of my panelists, Cheruiyot and Halwale and Jakoyo here, about the procedure. When we were talking about what has happened and which is still on our screen now on the arraignment of the governor for Samburu. That question on, is the president going to be speaking about a vibrant, determined war on corruption that will be entrenched within the processes and procedures of law, such that when it has to happen, it will happen without questions, without finger pointing, without even assumption that it is driven by other intention. And I think for us to be able to succeed in this war, the president must have his take and say on it. That's besides all the other things that he's going to be saying.
Thank you.
And let me summarize by saying that this question of the Big Four agenda and all the gains that have been made and the ones that are intended to be made will be directly pegged. I've been very loud in saying, Dibal, that the notion that the Big Four agenda is the president's legacy is wrong. The Big Four agenda is not the legacy of Uhuru Kenyatta. Yes. That is the future of the country. The Big Four agenda is the future of this country. That's how we have to think.
All right. Your closing remarks on the State of the Nation address.
Yes, I'd wish to first of all
briefly
disagree with Jakoyo on Parliament being dead. If he's talking about National Assembly, where he used to be, maybe then. But for Senate, and this is what I know, last month, Mithika and Wamatangi know this, Senate actually censured, because when we were discussing the issue of the maize scandal, and there's a report that was tabled, Senate censured, I think, 4 cabinet ministers and the head of public service, Mr. Kinyo, because they sat in that committee that approved the importation of maize, and that report is awaiting implementation.
Point of information.
Point of information,
yes.
I want to agree with my brother Cheruiyot. And that's why I'm saying there are a number of inconsistencies that you look at and start wondering whether we are really serious in this business. The PIC report, which I did as the chair of PIC, the 16th report, I also did a recommendation that 4 ministers sitting then, including the Kenyan you are talking about, is in that report. Unanimously. And passed by Parliament.
Thank you. Just leave it at that because of time.
So, so the information that I wanted to tell Jakoyo is that at Senate, that censure is active and is under implementation because of that decision. Number 2, on the issue of corruption, I think it will be important for the president to also at least tell the country, because there are many things that we continue to hear and worry us. For example, on this issue of Kimwarer and Aror, if it is true for sure that 21 billion shillings has been lost by taxpayers, what does it say of the management competence of the president and his deputy if 21 billion shillings can be lost? So, you know, we should not just hear very rosy speeches about, oh, we're increasing the war. We want to hear very sound and concise arguments from him as a head of state. And finally, there's something that we are missing in all this discussion. Of course, I feel, and sometimes wrongly so, no, rightly so, that we are paying too much attention to this war on corruption, that we miss out on the other aspects of government, what government should be doing. Right, I would wish the president addresses also on the economy. Boni, as it is, Dibal, government is a closed shop right now.
Boni, your
closing remark. I want to take this opportunity to send my heartfelt condolences to the family of Honorable Johnson Mungatana, who has lost our friend, his wife, Violet Wairimu. My condolences to Elsie, Warren, and Gabriel, her children, who are my friends.
Thank you very much. Mithika Linturi, your closing remarks, briefly.
Yeah, we welcome the speech by His Excellency the President to Parliament as required of him by law, and as many people are saying, because the fight against corruption is completely re-energized. I think it is also necessary for him also to address one aspect as required of by Article 40 of the Constitution of Kenya, subsection Article 6, whereby any illegally acquired property, because there are very many rich people here that acquired their property illegally and continues to portray themselves as angels and saints when they are seated on a property that belongs to the public. And I want to commend the EACC because the other day they returned land in Kiambu, in Nakuru, and many others. I have come from Meru where land has been taken and we have nowhere. People are sitting on that land, public land, and we have nowhere to put up a theater for the children.
Thank you. Jacko, 30 seconds? 30 seconds.
Yes. Just to give Cheriot and Bonnie something to take home. What have you people given Orengo that is giving you people so much space to make noise? The president must act and must act and act.
Thank you.
Act.
Right. Wamatangi, 30 seconds.
Dibal, because I serve in government, the government of Jubilee, I would like to take the opportunity to remind my colleagues in government, including the head of state and his deputy, that this is going to be the 6th State of the Nation address, 3 more to go. And we made promises in 2013 with a red, beautiful book called the Manifesto.
Thank you.
And what we'll be asking ourselves is, if on a score of 10 years of service, and this being the 6th year, would we be scoring more than 70% to say that the 3, we can score 30? And that means we have work to do. We shouldn't have time to entertain these games of fighting in fighting.
Thank you.
We should work as a team and deliver to Kenyans.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your comments. I can see them so many on Twitter, but of course we are strapped for time. Time is out of the premium right now. We want to thank you for your participation and getting to wrap the show with me this morning. You've been watching People and Politics here on AM Live.